A weak boy finds an overpowered mechanical arm that destroys everything on its own. As he rides through the futuristic city of Kitakagami, the protagonist's attention is captured by something unusual happening on top of a building. Moments earlier, inside the building, armed guards realize that a valuable item was being stolen by a young woman using robotic limbs. She effortlessly scales the structure and reaches the balcony, only to be met by dozens of men pointing their guns at her. The tattoo on her leg starts glowing, enhancing her mechanical limbs. One of the guards yells that she's a Mecha-Ude user. Her speed and power are extraordinary, but the security team uses anti-Mecha-Ude weapons to disable her. Just then, a man with his own mechanical limbs arrives to retrieve the stolen item. The girl's robotic arm, seemingly alive, is stunned to see another of its kind working against it, but the man claims Mecha-Ude are just tools for humans. He pulls the item back with his bladed chains, but the girl orders her limbs, Sinus, and Dex to attack. She breaks free and charges at him, igniting a fierce battle. As they fight, security opens fire again, but the woman dodges the bullets and continues. After a brutal clash, she grabs the item, but a crack in its glass causes it to explode, emitting a beam of light that the boy saw from afar. After the explosion, a cube falls from the shattered container and tumbles off the building. The following morning, Ikaru Amatsuga wakes to a voice in his head pleading for help just as his alarm clock finishes ringing. After a while, he heads out with his bag. Throughout the city, Higami Corporation's ads and drones are everywhere. On a crowded subway, Hikaru is still puzzled by the events of the previous day. While researching, he stumbled upon an article on Naohito Kagami's work. In the comments, someone says it's pointless for ordinary people to try. Just then, a man falls asleep on Hikaru's shoulder, interrupting him. Nearby, a pregnant woman catches his eye, while two older women seem to gossip about his manners, but Hikaru remains stuck under the sleepy passenger. Turning back to his phone, he spots an ad for Kitakagami Prep School, which makes him sweat nervously. Frozen in place, he watches as the sleeping man offers his seat to the pregnant woman. Hikaru suddenly remembers he forgot something and needs to get off, but three classmates approach him for a chat. During their talk, someone mentions receiving a sports ball, and Tagawa remarks that in baseball, Yakumo Kagami is Kitakagami's biggest star, but now the spotlight is on the monster Kosu Tagawa. The prep school ad reads, "Take a step forward, seize your future," but Tagawa believes people like them struggle because they can't take that step. He asks for Hikaru's thoughts, but Hikaru, lost in his phone, doesn't hear him. Meanwhile, the girl with the Mecha-Ude learns from her mechanical arm that the cube must be nearby. After glancing away from his phone, Hikaru shares his version of what happened the previous day. He recalls hearing a voice, looking out the window, and seeing a strange glow around the Kagami building. Climbing to a higher spot for a clearer view, he witnessed the building explode and recorded it. Along with the blast, a glowing object fell from the building, though none of this was captured on video. At that moment, a girl named Shirayama joins them, and Tagawa tells her Hikaru's been experiencing strange hallucinations involving voices and explosions. Another friend asks what the voice sounded like, and Hikaru, embarrassed, admits it was someone asking for help. As soon as he says this, he feels a strong sense that the voice came from a specific direction and abruptly runs off without explaining. Hikaru reaches a restricted area where a police officer warns him to stay back. After the officer leaves, Hikaru hears the voice even more clearly and crosses the barrier, approaching a grated door that leads to a dark room. Gathering his courage, he enters and discovers the cube that had fallen from the building. As he tries to figure out if the voice came from it, the cube suddenly asks for help. Hikaru realizes it wasn't his imagination. The object climbs onto his hoodie and emits the same brilliant light seen from miles away, catching the attention of a girl with mechanical limbs. A robotic arm emerges from the cube, slowly assessing the safety of its surroundings. Hikaru spins around trying to understand what's going on, when he notices something clinging to his back. Naturally, he's terrified as the mechanical arm thanks him for saving it but struggles to remember its own name. Panicking, Hikaru tries to pull it off, but as the arm begins to cry, he apologizes, still confused. Suddenly, a drone from the Kagami group locates Hikaru, labeling him as a potential target and chasing him with spinning blades. Hikaru runs, the metallic arm grabbing his pants to hold on, which causes them to fall and makes him trip. In desperation, Hikaru offers the arm to the drone, thinking it's the target. But when attacked, the arm defends him, disabling the drone. However, more drones appear with the same mission, and the robotic arm warns Hikaru that they must work together to escape. Meanwhile, in a massive office, an important figure is informed that the trigger arm has been found and has attached itself to a civilian. Naohito Kagami, the company's president, decides to let his subordinates handle the situation. They order a 2-mile perimeter around the area, determined to recover the arm no matter what happens to the kid. Meanwhile, Hikaru and the arm hide from the drones, successfully evading them. Relieved, Hikaru asks what the robotic arm is, but it can't answer, having forgotten its own identity. The robot understands one thing: the boy in front of it is kind. Hikaru says he hasn't done anything special, but the arm insists it was saved, explaining that without Arbitrium, it wouldn't be able to move so well. Hikaru asks what Arbitrium is, but the robot ignores him and instead asks for his name. Hikaru doesn't answer and simply wishes the arm good luck before walking away. As the arm starts losing power, Hikaru grows concerned and runs back to check on it. The arm regains its strength, but Hikaru, now frustrated, walks away again. Each time he leaves, the arm weakens, so Hikaru gives in and stays by its side. Drones eventually find them, and the arm, now called Alma, drags Hikaru away as a Kagami employee watches from above, assuming the drones will handle the situation. Meanwhile, Aki Murasame, guided by her mechanical arms, follows the path of a mysterious beam. When she reaches Hikaru, she takes over and together, they defeat the drones. Aki then warns Alma not to move unless it wants to die. One of Aki's arms demands she first vow to protect them, but the other arm argues it no longer matters. Then the enigmatic Kagami employee reappears, eager to settle the score for what Aki did to him the night before. Aki responds that she has no business with the man, while Hikaru and Alma try to escape via the narrow path. The girl moves to pursue them, but the enemy reacts, stopping her from leaving. Amidst the confusion, Hikaru navigates the fork and dodges more drones. Aki is livid at her rival's interference, while the protagonist begins to lose his composure in this wild, unexpected turn in his life. Although he keeps running, exhaustion starts to weigh on him. Seeing this, Alma offers to stay behind, saying Kagami is after him, not the boy, and the last thing she wants is for this kind-hearted kid to get hurt for no reason. At that moment, Aki catches up with them after defeating the Kagami employee, now free to complete her mission. Alma pledges to obey Aki if she lets the boy go, but Hikaru recalls a report stating that ordinary people never even get a chance, so he decides not to abandon the mechanical arm in this chaos. Seeing that Hikaru intends to resist, Aki realizes she has no choice but to use force, preparing her Mecha-Ude for battle. As this unfolds, Alma asks for Hikaru's trust and urges him to take a step forward, saying that only by working together can they have a chance. Hearing this, Hikaru recalls Kagami's prep school advertisements always trying to convince people life is easy, which fills him with a surge of anger, driving him to charge at the enemy. In that moment, Alma activates its system, growing in size and power. With a strong punch, it drives a key into the ground. This gives Hikaru and his robotic companion the opportunity to escape, and they take it without hesitation. Around the area, other Kagami employees are closing in, searching for the runaways, while the boy and his metal arm choose the least likely routes to avoid being caught. During the escape, Hikaru mentions hearing Alma's name from the woman and introduces himself to the mechanical entity. Meanwhile, a young boy collapses from exhaustion after realizing that someone has stolen Alma from him. Gasping for air with the help of an inhaler, he angrily declares that the trigger arm is his. At the same time, the leader of a rival group, which Aki is part of, regrets their failure but stresses that Alma must be retrieved before it ends up in enemy hands. With this goal in mind, Aki is sent back on the same mission. Without hesitation, the investigators swiftly identify the boy who attempted to flee with the trigger arm, a random middle schooler who got entangled in the whole situation. According to investigator Tus, eliminating him would be a cruel command. However, her partner Warner responds that this highlights the significance of the trigger arm and asks if she has any emotional attachment to the boy. Tus retaliates by pinching his leg sharply, remarking that it's because of people like him that they aren't taken seriously. Warner concedes that Tus is diligent, and she assures him she wouldn't hesitate even if it involved a child. When Hikaru went to the school restroom, he never expected that woman to pursue him relentlessly. Alma appeared, noting with surprise that Aki wasn't showing any signs of aggression. Hikaru remarked that they likely wouldn't be attacked even in the classroom, so Alma suggested they talk to Aki, saying there was so much confusion earlier they didn't have a chance to say anything. However, Hikaru clearly remembered Aki vowing to unalive him, so he wasn't convinced by the idea. In fact, he thought it might be wiser to contact the police or something. Deep in thought, Hikaru was startled when he noticed Alma had unraveled the entire toilet paper roll, nearly covering them both in the restroom. Alma, fascinated by the contraption, claimed he just couldn't resist. Out of the blue, Aki appeared, advising that the young man shouldn't speak to the police because the officers were mere pawns of the Kagami group, and if they captured Hikaru, they'd hand him straight over to the boss. Amidst the chaos, Aki offered to be his bodyguard. Panicking, Hikaru protested that it was the men's bathroom and darted out as quickly as possible. Still wrapped in toilet paper, Shirayama watched the chaos unfold, but what terrified her most was seeing Aki chasing after Hikaru with unrelenting determination. Later, Hikaru met his friends who were curious about his situation with Aki. He tried to explain that she was literally chasing him, but they didn't believe him, thinking he was hiding something. Just then, Aki appeared again, and one kid pointed out where Hikaru was. By that time, Hikaru had already fooled and found a hiding spot. Suddenly, Shirayama approached Aki and introduced herself. Noticing how anxious Aki seemed, she offered her a box of cookies. While Shirayama explained the flavors, Alma and Hikaru were terrified, thinking Aki might hurt Shirayama. But to their surprise, Aki eagerly accepted the cookies. Despite Aki's social awkwardness, the two seemed to click, thanks to Shirayama's outgoing nature. This left Hikaru puzzled, while Alma suggested he talk to Aki. Hikaru had a different idea: sleep. Alma grumbled, but Hikaru explained he couldn't talk about the mechanical arm at school. Switching topics, Alma noticed Hikaru pulling headphones from his pocket. He explained they were noise-canceling, which fascinated Alma. As the strange scene unfolded, Shirayama subtly gave Aki advice about Hikaru. When Hikaru returned to school, Alma kept urging him to talk to Aki, but he wasn't emotionally ready. Shirayama caught up with him, handing over a note from Aki, asking to meet in the old school building's art room after class. Shirayama scolded Hikaru, saying Aki had been searching for him all day but couldn't find him, leaving Hikaru stunned. Thinking he was just shy, Shirayama dragged him to the meeting spot, telling him to accept Aki's feelings. Once inside, Hikaru realized Aki had used Shirayama to get her way. But Aki clarified that Shirayama had orchestrated everything. Hearing Aki use Shirayama's first name despite having just met her drove Hikaru crazy. Still, he wanted to know Aki's purpose. Aki revealed she was part of ARMS and needed to retrieve the trigger arm. Since Hikaru was bonded with it, they had to bring him too. Alma, feeling weak without Hikaru, agreed and Hikaru accepted, wanting answers about himself. Aki tried to make sense of it all, and when Hikaru tried to speak, one of Aki's arms told him to be quiet, noting Aki struggled with complex thoughts. Finally, she insisted they examine the robotic arm immediately, leaving Hikaru with no choice. He asked if Alma could grow large again, like before, to handle any threats. The mecha complied, unleashing its power. Aki was impressed, but the arm quickly weakened. Seizing the moment, Hikaru grabbed it and ran, while Alma complained he shouldn't be running in the hallway. Aki pursued them furiously. Shirayama appeared, reminding Hikaru to talk to Aki, which sent him into a panic as he sought a way out. Meanwhile, Tus was tracking his target, but a student blocked his entry. Trapped, Hikaru realized his only option was to head upstairs. Aki's arms pointed in conflicting directions, yet she chose to go down. Suddenly, a hole opened in the ceiling above Hikaru, and he found himself under Aki's control. She confessed confusion over why he hadn't defeated her when she was vulnerable and demanded to know his intentions with Alma. Though one of her arms tried to explain Hikaru meant no harm, she ordered them to prove their bond as her arm regained power, but soon weakened again. Aki tells Hikaru that he's only injuring the trigger arm, forcing her to deal with the boy. Shirayama bursts in, misinterpreting the scene, and leaves, thinking he's interrupting something romantic. Warner uses the open door to sneak into the school and target Hikaru. Hikaru spots Warner wearing a Kagami Group uniform, and Warner reveals his Mecha-Ude, aiming to take down Alma's host with a sonic shot. The spy opens the door wider, giving a sniper a clear shot at Hikaru, who barely escapes. Warner continues the chase until Hikaru is stunned again. At the end of the hall, the sniper fires, but Aki blocks it with her metal arm. She reports finding two chained Mecha-Udes that don't seem to be of the worm type. Aki assumes Warner is from Kagami's expansion department. Alma asks what a chained Mecha-Ude is, and one of Aki's arms explains that it's a device that enslaves robots. Aki tells Hikaru to hide with Alma, but Warner attacks with luminous blades. Hikaru, exhausted from running, wants to give up, but Alma refuses to leave Aki and the Mecha-Ude behind. Reluctantly, Hikaru follows Alma's orders. At the bottom of the stairs, Alma is on the verge of collapse from being so far from the boy. Hikaru approaches, telling the robot to stop acting tough, knowing his condition. He places the trigger arm on his shoulder, thinking of ways to counter the sonic shot. Meanwhile, Tus asks her partner for an update but receives no reply, so she heads into the facility. Inside, the henchmen have chained Aki's Mecha-Ude. They offer them to her, but she refuses, stating she's not like them. She's carried outside, where Tus asks about the trigger arm. Her partner reveals it's hidden in the old school, but Tus shifts focus to a key. Frustrated, she can't unalive the ARMS member due to her orders. As Hikaru arrives carrying the target, the villain is confident, but Hikaru warns it won't be as easy as before. Warner fires the sonic shot again, but this time the boy, wearing noise-canceling headphones, dodges it. He throws his metal arm to free Eiki's Mecha-Udes. The problem is, Hikaru has to stay close to the arm to prevent malfunction. He leaps toward Alma but gets hit by Tu's rifle, losing one side of his headphones. Still, the plan works and Eiki is freed. Without a second thought, she uses Tu as a barrier against the sonic blast and swiftly charges at Warner, her defense holding firm. With this protection, she's able to close the gap between her and a Kagami member, delivering a crushing blow. The intensity of the battle causes the old school building to collapse. Tu manages to escape, but Warner is left behind. Other ARMS members arrive shortly after, criticizing Aki for the chaos she caused and inquiring about Alma. Meanwhile, security staff from a facility decide to reach out to White Raven, as someone has stolen the highly dangerous artificial Mecha-Ude Ouroboros. Meanwhile, Hikaru is taken to the ARMS headquarters, an organization that opposes the Akagami group and was founded to free the Mecha-Udes from their constraints. The leader of the group introduces himself as Algis and reveals that his Mecha-Ude is called Fist. Fist refers to Alma as little brother and assures him that his memories will soon return. However, despite needing Alma's assistance, they make it clear that Hikaru is not necessary. Meanwhile, a young ARMS member walks through the streets talking to someone via a device. The person mentions that a middle school boy managed to bring Alma back. The ARMS member admits he's never heard of a Darais made with a sweatshirt, just as the Ouroboros kid appears. Switching to Hikaru, he's being used as a weight for Alma's push-ups, while telling Aki that it hurt when they said he was useless to the resistance. At that moment, a scientist explained that he'd analyzed Hikaru's abilities while he was asleep. The scientist revealed that Hikaru possesses arbitrium, a power from the human mind that powers the Mecha-Ude. Unfortunately, Hikaru has much less arbitrium than needed to handle this kind of robot, meaning he wasn't made for this. Quen, the scientist, bluntly said Hikaru had almost a negative level of arbitrium, making him even weaker than a regular person. As a result, Quen emphasized that Hikaru is just Alma's temporary host with no real power. But Alma defended Hikaru, saying he could do anything if he tried and that he's a kind person who helps others. Without him, Alma wouldn't even be here. Despite Alma's defense, Quen argued that the data doesn't lie. Hikaru has no future in this. Aki disagreed, saying Hikaru had the power to draw strength from Alma, which is why she offered to train him. Hikaru then questioned if training was even worth it since he wasn't contributing much beyond being Alma's weight. Aki explained that arbitrium is tied to one's spirit and encouraged the boy to stay motivated, reminding him that he wanted to help the robot arm. During this, Eki gets a call from ARMS and asks her student to join her. They learn that thieves are stealing Mecha-Ude from their carriers, with the third theft happening just recently. Algis suggests it could be the work of a new Kagami agent group, so they must act fast to recover the stolen arms before it's too late. Alma is confused by the urgency, so one of Eiki's arms explains that if a Mecha-Ude is forcibly removed, it will die in a few days because arbitrium leaks from the Darais point. Though not fully understood, arbitrium is essential for human biology, and those bonded with Mecha-Ude gain extraordinary abilities. While this might not apply to Hikaru, Alma's safety is paramount. Aki then asks about the boy attacked in the incident, but Algis cuts her off, reminding her to focus on protecting Alma without letting emotions interfere. Hikaru is confused by the mention of emotions, but Aki dismisses it, calling her student over to examine something. Meanwhile, at the Kagami building, a subordinate reports to the president that Jun's whereabouts remain unknown. One of Naohito Kagami's trusted men notes that Jun has disgraced the family by stealing an incomplete Mecha-Ude. Tagao, who wasn't part of the conversation, suspects that someone from Division 3 promotion helped the group escape. He believes that if needed, they can simply call back the White Ravens using a key. Meanwhile, Aki is investigating the case independently without notifying the authorities. Nearby, Amada is searching for CEO Kagami's younger brother Jun with his Mecha-Ude Joe. The two set off in the name of White Raven's honor. Suddenly, Aki appears with Hikaru and asks Amada if he knows anything about a worm-type Mecha-Ude carrier. Without hesitation, the White Raven's henchmen attack Aki, but she quickly summons Sinus and Dex to fend them off. Imada, seeing the damage to his men, changes his approach, assuming the intruder is with arms. Hikaru notices a green-haired boy struggling with an inhaler and rushes to help, unaware it's Jun. Distracted, Jun escapes. Imada then transforms Joe into a motorcycle and chases after him. Further ahead, Hikaru is stopped by more White Raven's henchmen. But just as one is about to strike, Alma intervenes to protect him, revealing his trigger arm. Imada soon catches up on his bike, but as everyone watches, Jun escapes again. Despite the chase, Alma starts running, knowing the bike is faster and closing in. Aki intervenes to restore order, ending the White Raven's show with a powerful kick that knocks Joe off balance. Joe flips over, throwing his owner off. Meanwhile, under threat from Kagami, Aki tries to get answers, but he insists he knows nothing about any worm. Losing patience, Aki hurls a large container near him to scare him. Sinus and Dex realize the pair truly don't know anything, as they couldn't respond even under pressure. Aki then questions Hikaru's sudden escape attempt. Despite his explanation, Sinus and Dex don't buy it, thinking he wanted to flee. Furious, Aki grabs Hikaru, reminding him that his actions nearly cost Alma her life. Though she acknowledged Hikaru's potential before, she now calls him useless, warning that if he's not going to help, he should at least stay out of the way. Meanwhile, Jun finally takes a photo of Alma after searching for him. Annoyed, Hikaru throws Oi's criticism back at her, claiming she's the one who brought him into this dangerous situation, and now she's spewing nonsense. Fed up, Hikaru decides to run away for good. As he celebrates avoiding further conflict, Aki steps in to settle the matter. The boy summons a powerful force, revealing he's a worm type, which leaves his opponent shocked. Meanwhile, Hikaru is crying and Alma keeps urging him to return. Suddenly, Hikaru's phone rings. It's Aki's number, but the green-haired child who took her hostage is calling, demanding Hikaru's Mecha-Ude in exchange for the arms member. The child has ripped the Mecha-Ude from the girl, and she'll die soon if they don't act fast. A meeting point is set. All just contacts Hikaru, telling him to wait for the bodyguard, but Hikaru feels powerless and is left discouraged. Alma tries to encourage him by reminding him of his past importance, but Hikaru believes the metal arm is the only source of his courage, not his own will. Determined, he heads toward Jun, disobeying Algis. He realizes the child he's facing is the one he tried to help earlier. Alma assures him they'll get Sinus and Dex back, but the child only cares about Alma, as the trigger arm gives unmatched strength. Hikaru refuses to back down, and Jun charges at him with full force. Alma guides Hikaru's movements, but their enemy's power is too overwhelming for them to get close to Sinus and Dex. The child provokes the protagonist by saying weak people can't change anything, but if anyone knows that feeling, it's Hikaru. He's all too familiar with feeling useless, yet he doesn't give up. This time, he charges at his opponent and lands a punch driven by rage. The hit enrages Jun, who retaliates fiercely. With the battlefield under his control, Jun unleashes electrical blasts from his Mecha-Ude, hitting Hikaru and Alma, almost ending the fight. Jun then traps Hikaru with his tentacles and delivers another powerful shock, needing his inhaler afterward. Believing the fight is over, he's caught off guard when Alma, who is pretending to be knocked out, strikes back. However, the blow isn't enough, and Alma starts to weaken from being too far from his host. In that moment, Hikaru recalls his bond with Alma and pushes himself to close the gap. With great effort, he touches the trigger arm, releasing a massive energy surge as they fuse, becoming incredibly powerful. Jun attacks with confidence, but every strike is deflected. After a fierce battle, Jun is finally overwhelmed by a devastating punch and is defeated. Before they can celebrate, Tagao, the mysterious boy from the Kagami headquarters meeting, shows up. He announces he's only there to retrieve his master and isn't interested in fighting, but he decides to take Sinus and Dex for himself. Hikaru insists on getting his friends back, and since Todo isn't getting paid for this, he easily returns the Mecha-Ude and leaves. The next day, Aki wakes up next to her metal arms and goes to Hikaru, who's fixing the hood where Alma stays. Embarrassed, she admits she got involved because a worm-type Mecha-Ude killed her family, but it wasn't the green-haired guy. She thanks Hikaru for saving her and takes over the stitching, saying he was too slow. Suddenly, Shirayama shows up, sees the scene, and assumes she's interrupting something romantic. But Aki doesn't care and grabs the cookies Shirayama brought. Alma, thinking they were for Hikaru, drags him into a fight over the treats, leaving Hikaru confused by everyone's behavior. As night falls, some ARMS members debate if the situation is overwhelming for Hikaru, but their wait ends when Kagami's transport truck finally arrives. Inside, a henchman celebrates that the shackle is functioning after scientists stripped its self-awareness, though issues with the Mecha-Ude remain. On top of the vehicle, Hikaru hides, questioning his purpose. Alma encourages him to focus on rescuing their comrades, but Hikaru asks him to stay quiet to avoid being spotted. Oriyama checks in and Hikaru reports a dangerous Mecha-Ude user aboard. The veteran tells him to stick to the plan, activate the EMP at the interchange. Meanwhile, the enemy powers up his metal arm, threatening Kagami's scientists to reveal anything useful from the Mecha-Ude cubes despite orders. Alma, disregarding the plan, attacks the driver, flipping the truck. Hikaru flees as Alma grabs a cube. However, their escape is cut off when the truck is launched toward them, followed by an explosive. The hulking Kagami henchman demands his Mecha-Ude back. Shaken, Hikaru is dragged along by Alma, who desperately tries to keep them alive as Tani and Carix rush to help. Meanwhile, the massive enemy overpowers them and fires another explosive, boasting that the battle is over. However, the shot destroys a bridge, sending his Mecha-Ude flying as Hikaru and Alma vanish. Tani manages to save them just in time, but the enemy quickly finds their hiding spot and resumes the chase. Aki intervenes to prevent disaster, allowing Tani to grab Hikaru and flee. The brute, surprised to see the girl has 2 Mecha-Udes, reveals he has 3. He attacks recklessly but collapses from exhaustion, leading Sinus and Dex to mock him for trying to control multiple robots without training. As he turns to call the retrieval team, something unknown wraps around his neck, and when he looks back, he's transformed into a giant, launching devastating attacks. Aki dodges the assault, though the brute seems drained, controlled by some unknown force. Hikaru arrives with Alma, who delivers a powerful punch, knocking the enemy back. Aki complains that Hikaru should have fled, but the enemy quickly recovers and fires again. Alma absorbs the impact, shielding the group as the fight continues. Hikaru matches him blow for blow, his moves far more precise and efficient than his enraged opponent. Alma shouts that Mecha-Udes aren't toys as she delivers a final strike, taking the brute down for good. After the victory, Tani arrives with saved Mecha-Ude cubes, crediting Hikaru for the success. Meanwhile, Aki wonders how the enemy kept fighting despite losing energy. With the mission over, she returns to base, heads to the shower, and is flooded by memories of her sister, who called herself the princess and Aki the hero. This promise to protect her sister haunts her. After the shower, Aki picks up a family photo, gazing at it before running into Quen, who awkwardly reacts to seeing her in home clothes. Sinus and Dex shield her from his gaze as he reports that the Kagami member they capture hasn't revealed any information and none of his Mecha-Udes are of the worm type. Still, Aki insists it was a worm type based on how the man regained strength. The next morning at 8 a.m., Alma wakes Hikaru, rushing him to avoid being late. Aki shows up at his window to speed things up, and moments later, Aki tosses a groggy Hikaru into his seat like a sack of trash. All their classmates assume it's a typical case of romance, but that's far from true. The girls, along with Shirayama, are gossiping about a rich new transfer student, but Aki doesn't seem too interested. Suddenly, a boy calls Hikaru to the rooftop via the school's intercom. When he gets there, it's Jun Kagami, the new student who claims he transferred just to meet Hikaru and retrieve Alma. Aki and Hikaru immediately confront Jun, but just as he's about to retaliate, Tobe warns him through his earpiece not to break his promise on the first day. Jun's agreement to stay at the school included a rule he can't use his Mecha-Ude. He then informs them that his Mecha-Ude, Ouroboros, needs time to adapt to his body. In the meantime, he plans to figure out why Hikaru can use the trigger arm, and once he knows, he'll take it. Hikaru charges at him again, but Alma stops him, sensing that Jun knows something about his past. As the arms group argues, Jun admits he can't attack at school, but warns Hikaru to stay alert outside. After the rooftop confrontation, Aki follows Hikaru relentlessly, determined to prevent Alma from being captured, no matter how hard Hikaru tries to escape her watchful eye. Eventually, he manages to lose her, if only briefly. At that moment, Kagami approaches again, trying to figure out how his opponent can use the trigger arm. In a conversation with Todo about the difference between him and Hikaru, Todo guesses it might be related to their diets. Hearing this, Jun decides to treat his #1 rival to lunch. Alma notices Jun holding a super ultra black card, the kind only celebrities have, while Hikaru takes the chance to ask something about Alma. Just then, Aki arrives in time to take the trigger arm and its host away. Before leaving, she tells Kagami that if he wants to treat someone to lunch, he should take her to an all-you-can-eat, high-end yakiniku buffet. After that, Hikaru heads to the bathroom, with Aki always trailing behind, thinking they'll never uncover anything about Alma's past that way. Suddenly, Hikaru gets an idea, as today is the school's general sports tournament. On the court, Hikaru participates while looking for Jun and Aki, only to be hit in the head by a stray ball. Watching the scene, Jun wonders how someone wielding the trigger arm could be so bad at sports. As if to make it worse, Aki throws a ball from a neighboring court, hitting Hikaru's head again and rushing to his aid. Meanwhile, Shirayama arrives and notices the competition over Hikaru, so she organizes a duel between Aki and Jun to settle it, with herself as referee. Facing Jun, Aki imposes a condition. If she wins, Jun must leave Hikaru alone. But before the fight begins, the protagonist wakes up and offers to pay for the yakiniku buffet. Wanting her favorite meal, Aki agrees to call off the duel and walks away. Hikaru finally gets a chance to speak with Jun. Alma admits he knows nothing about his past, and Jun reveals that Alma's family holds the key, first showing him a photo that proves Alma was once part of the Kagami family, linked to Yakumo Kagami, the founder of the company that shaped Kitakagami. Alma is horrified at the idea of having harmed other Mecha-Udes alongside them, but Jun has no answers and tells them to investigate further. Meanwhile, Eki gets a call from Quentin, who has information on a worm-type user. After speaking with Jun, Hikaru and Alma go to the library to research the city's history. They find a portrait of Yakumo Kagami, which enrages Alma due to the Kagami family's atrocities against Mecha-Udes. He feels conflicted, sensing his past is close but still beyond his memory. Later, Aki confronts the worm user, who holds Tani captive. The user rips Carex from Tani and shatters the Mecha-Ude. In a rage, Sinus and Dex attack, but the worm user dodges and attaches a device to Tani, forcing him to fight his allies. Aki is forced to defeat Tani in the chaos. Hikaru, hearing the news, rushes to help, arriving with Oyama, who takes the injured to arms. After their scientists and physicians do everything possible to stabilize the human, Algis reassures them that Tani will recover, but he can't make the same promise for Carex. Hikaru proposes they might fix the robot with replacement parts, but Algis and Fist explain that Mecha-Udes are sentient beings, just like humans, and they originate from another dimension. Having lost their homeland and companions, Ordella, the cube who gave them life, was discovered on this planet with human assistance. However, during an attempt to awaken her, an accident occurred, causing Ordella to lose control. To seal her power, Alma expended all his energy and fell into a deep slumber. In other words, Alma's lost memories are the key to breaking this seal and reactivating Ordella. Nevertheless, this power could be misused, making Alma's top priority to prevent such a catastrophe. Amid all of this, Carex's life signs disappear completely. When Aki met up with Quentin, he informed her that the worm-type user she was after was still on the loose. He'd only recently discovered this after noticing incident reports of someone stealing people's mechas. Aside from June, this had apparently been happening for months, so Aki grabbed him angrily by the collar, demanding why he hadn't told her sooner. In his defense, he hadn't known until he hacked into the ARMS database to help her. Realizing that this information had been there for months, Aki suspected Algis must have known and kept it from her. Quentin suggested Algis was likely investigating the incidents on his own, as he'd been tracking this for 8 years. Just then, an alarm sounded. The worm-type user was active again. Wasting no time, Aki rushed to confront her old enemy, and soon tracked her down in an empty parking garage. She prepared for revenge, fueled by the memory of her family's death. But as she got close enough to attack, she froze. The worm-tech user was her younger sister, Fubuki. Back when they were little, Aki and Fubuki would play games together, though Aki never quite understood them. Then their mother would call Fubuki for experiments, which Aki usually did, except when she was injured and Fubuki had to take her place. Aki last saw Fubuki leaving the room with a smile, until moments later the facility erupted in flames and Fubuki and her parents vanished without a trace. Now Aki, Sinus, and Dex are stunned to see Fubuki alive. They're glad to see Aki. Fubuki's severe coughing shows she's in poor shape. Suddenly, her worm mecha appears, prompting Sinus and Dex to slam it against the wall. Many questions remain unanswered, but they must flee quickly as ARMS agents are approaching. When the agents reach the garage, they find only a cracked wall and one of Aki's broken hair clips, confirming Aki's suspicions. Outside, Aki holds the mecha captive, demanding answers and accuses it of killing her parents. The mecha tries to explain, claiming it was an accident, but Sinus and Dex cut it off, suspecting deceit. Sinus recalls the mecha's attack on everyone that day, though he doesn't understand why. Fubuki, distraught, urges Eki to stop, taking the blame for the tragedy and apologizing repeatedly. Amaryllis tries to comfort her. Sinus and Dex press Amaryllis to tell the full story of what truly happened that day. On the day of the incident, everything was proceeding as planned, and Fubuki was happily sharing with her mother about a game she played with Eki. The experiment was designed to explore the potential for arbitrary amplification, so Amaryllis and her partner enter to assist. However, the moment Amaryllis made eye contact with Fubuki, an unexpected phenomenon occurred, causing their arbitrium to resonate. Amaryllis attempted to break the resonance by desynchronizing from Fubuki, but this only worsened the situation. Fubuki has long wanted to discuss this with Aki, but guilt has held her back. She feels responsible for their parents' deaths. Though Amaryllis insists it wasn't her fault, Aki still blames Fubuki, and despite Fubuki's pleas, Aki is determined to confront Amaryllis. However, Fubuki collapses under the stress, something Amaryllis had feared. Aki suggests taking her to a hospital, but Amaryllis explains that after the incident, Fubuki developed a condition that prevents her from producing her own arbitrium. No doctor or scientist has been able to help. They have been managing her symptoms, but according to Amaryllis, Fubuki's time is running out. There's only one way to save her, but it will be challenging. The next morning, Hikaru's alarm goes off and Alma wakes him, as this is usually when Aki flies through his window. However, today the window remains intact, and instead, Aki rings the front doorbell. Hikaru and Alma sense something strange, noticing that Aki never uses the front door, but since Aki seems unwilling to discuss it, Hikaru decides not to press her. Just then, Shirayama rushes over with a suggestion. With a big test coming up, they should all study together, including Jun, who has been watching Hikaru from afar all morning. She asks Jun to join, but he scoffs, saying he didn't come to this school to study. Ignoring him, Shirayama calls over to Hikaru, asking if they can use his house for the study session. Though Hikaru likes the idea of spending time with Shirayama, he's wary of Aki and Jun possibly clashing at his place. He tries to dissuade Shirayama, but she insists and even asks Aki to back her up. Aki politely declines, saying she already goes to Hikaru's house every morning, so studying there isn't special. She then walks off, with Hikaru following, sensing something is wrong, though Aki refuses to explain. Meanwhile, back at ARMS, a scientist, growing frustrated with the lack of information, approaches Quen's workstation to ask if he knows anything about Aki, who hasn't visited HQ recently. After initially denying involvement, Quen reluctantly admits, under pressure, that he may have had a role in Aki's current predicament. Meanwhile, Aki is by her ill sister's side as Amaryllis explains their dire situation. Since Fubuki can't produce her own arbitrium, Amaryllis has been siphoning it from other mecha users to keep Fubuki alive. However, Fubuki's illness is advancing too rapidly for Amaryllis to keep up, and time is running out. Amaryllis urges Aki to do whatever it takes to save her sister, and Aki realizes the only way to guarantee Fubuki's survival is to take Hikaru's life. Meanwhile, across the city, mecha users infected by Amaryllis, from both the ARMS and Kagami groups, begin to lose control and lash out, though Algis suspects the cause. All ARMS agents and Kagami group members are dispatched to contain the chaos. Later that evening, Shirayama, Jun, and Hikaru plan to study at Hikaru's house, but Hikaru receives an urgent message from Algis and heads to ARMS HQ. There, Algis apologizes for the sudden summons, explaining that dozens of mecha users have gone berserk, and he suspects Aki's involvement due to her interaction with a worm-type mecha user. If true, that would mean Aki has betrayed both humanity and the Mecha-Ude. For now, he aims to capture her for questioning, but she's a powerful mecha user, so they may need to use force to stop her. Alma and Hikaru can't believe Aki is under suspicion since she's their comrade, yet they understand that harems can't operate on sentiment alone. Aki only joined them because her goals align with theirs. If those goals have shifted, there's nothing preventing her from betraying them. Hikaru, however, refuses to believe Aki would do this and rushes to find her before ARMS does, determined to understand what's happening. Quen reminds Hikaru he has no idea where to search, but Quen has a plan to track Aki down using Wanner, a man who recently tried to kill Hikaru. Though Wanner is clearly reluctant, his mecha, Kejimaru, unexpectedly apologizes to Hikaru for the previous encounter. ARMS removed Kejimaru's restraints after capturing him, freeing his will. While Quen was hesitant to pair Kejimaru with Wanner again, no one else was available, and Kejimaru insisted on it. He's determined to teach Wanner the true meaning of justice, even if he has to drill it into him. Reluctantly, Wanner kneels, pledging to Hikaru and Alma that he and Kejimaru will be useful on the mission. In town, Kejimaru scans for Aki, but Wanner keeps whining about wanting to go home, frustrating Kejimaru, who tells him to work harder to make up for his past mistakes. Hikaru and Alma begin doubting this search method, but Kejimaru assures them they'll find Aki soon using acoustic sonar to track her arbitrium. Suddenly, Hikaru is attacked from behind and Kejimaru pulls him out of harm's way. Jun, the attacker, declares he'll stay with Hikaru until he uncovers the secret of his power. Alma then asks if Jun will help search for Aki, but Jun refuses, never having liked her. Alma persuades him by offering to share some of Hikaru's secrets during their study session. Word reaches Todo, who alerts Jun's brother and offers to monitor Jun, but his brother dismisses the concern, prioritizing company interests. Meanwhile, Kejimaru detects Aki's arbitrium in a parking garage. As they approach the source, they find Aki looking ready to follow Amaryllis' advice if it means helping her sister. Startled by his partner's sudden appearance, Hikaru asks where she's been, but she ignores him and moves closer. Alma mentions that she heard Aki was seen with a worm-type Mecha-Ude user, which leads Hikaru to ask if this involves her quest for revenge. Aki, however, avoids his questions and demands he come with her. When he resists, she lunges at him aggressively. Ironically, Kagami intervenes, stopping the attack since he considers Hikaru his own target. Aki tries to get Kagami out of the way, but his defenses are too strong. He subdues her with his chains, even taunting her about how easy it is. Suddenly, Hikaru grabs Kagami from behind, telling him to stop, forcing Jun to release his chains and free Aki. Hikaru then asks his friend to calm down and offers to help Aki. Alma seizes the moment to question Aki's violent insistence on taking Hikaru. Sinus finally reveals that Aki's sister Fubuki is alive, but Fubuki's Mecha-Ude Amaryllis explains that a large amount of arbitrium is needed to save her, and Hikaru's trigger arm might be enough. Upon hearing this, Jun bursts into laughter, recalling how Amaryllis caused a major incident in the past, a fact known among the Kagami group. According to him, Mecha-Ude only took Fubuki as a hostage to manipulate Aki. Still, Hikaru agrees to go with Aki, since they're friends, and Alma points out that they're great partners, even planning to share a yakiniku meal together afterward. Alma believes that friendship alone is enough to overcome this challenge. However, Higami insists that he, not Aki, will defeat Hikaru to claim the trigger arm. Hikaru, determined, sticks to his choice to help his comrade and extends his hand in support. Meanwhile, Aki reconsiders her approach. She wants to find another way to save her sister without relying on Hikaru's kindness. She views the arbitrium as merely the fastest option, but decides to pursue other paths, making it clear she isn't Hikaru's friend and is driven by revenge. Her blunt honesty about her motives annoys Hikaru, though the Mecha-Ude is embarrassed. Aki remains firm, insisting this issue is between her and her sister alone. Meanwhile, a member of the Arms uncovers data on Amaryllis from a Kagami group backup server, showing that Mecha-Ude is listed as test member 7, linked to an incident with 4 fatalities, including Fubuki. Amaryllis is a type of worm capable of detaching parts of herself to control humans. Quen, analyzing Fubuki's lip movements in a video, learns this fact. Meanwhile, Aki returns to her despondent sister, telling her that Hikaru won't be joining them, so they'll have to find another way out. Hurt, Fubuki accuses Aki of caring more for Hikaru than for her, hugging her sister and crying that Aki is letting her suffer, just like before. Moved, Aki decides to use her own arbitrium to heal Fubuki. Elsewhere, Alma urges Hikaru to follow Aki, but Hikaru, disturbed by what he overheard, starts to question if his desire to help others is only to feel good about himself. Hearing this, Jun Kagami remembers saying something similar to his brother and angrily demands a reaction from Hikaru. Though Hikaru feels conflicted, Alma reassures him that he truly wants to save his friend, not just for self-satisfaction. Alma then asks Warner and Kagemaru to locate Aki. At the same time, Quen realizes Amaryllis is currently controlling Fubuki, though he's still unsure why Amaryllis, who appears now with Aki's sister, only surfaced without prior warning. The Mecha Worms stopped hiding upon realizing that someone had triggered the weapon, causing Quen to question why the boss never told Aki about her sister. He then explains that Aki couldn't handle knowing the creature that killed her family was controlling her sister. I'll just try to keep this a secret, but it only worsened the situation. Amaryllis urges Aki to understand that her powers alone aren't enough, hinting that Hikaru is still needed. Aki refuses. Fubuki then raises her doll and coldly states that since her sister isn't fulfilling her purpose, she must be punished, throwing her dolls at Aki and disturbing her with this twisted behavior. Fubuki taunts her, saying she was kind enough to let Aki play the hero saving the princess. Panicked, Aki demands to know what happened to her real sister. Amaryllis accuses Aki of selfishness for not playing her assigned role, injuring the Mecha-Ude. Amaryllis attacks fiercely, but Aki narrowly escapes with help from Sinus and Dex. Fubuki's dolls join the assault, yet Aki fights back, fending them off. In a brief moment of awareness, Fubuki pleads for Aki's help, but Amaryllis only uses her to weaken the trio emotionally, then swiftly subdues them with her chains. Soon, the supposed Fubuki approaches, calling her sister innocent before deciding to take control of her body, wary of the doll she's currently using. Sinus and Dex try to react, but Amaryllis, who's manipulating Fubuki, is too strong. The Mecha-Ude approaches the sister, reminding her of the past incident and how Aki's parents repeatedly cloned the doll on the day of the accident. Amaryllis coldly reveals she killed them both without regret, leaving Aki tearful. Just then, Hikaru appears with Alma and Kagami, delivering a punch to Amaryllis. Though Aki is irritated by Hikaru's presence, he declares his intent to help. When Fubuki tries to grab him, Kagami blocks it, but Amaryllis quickly binds Hikaru with chains. Jun attempts to restrain the robot, but is mocked for using a flawed version of Ouroboros against her. As Amaryllis approaches the protagonist aiming to steal his arbitrium, Aki steps forward to protect him, but is overpowered. Amaryllis prepares to capture Hikaru, draining his energy and taunting that this resembles an event from 100 years ago, leaving Alma confused by her knowledge of the trigger arm. Controlling Hikaru, Amaryllis advances on Aki, who, feeling helpless and defeated, silently begs for aid as her life slips away. As Hikaru's vision cleared, he began releasing his arbitria more intensely. Amaryllis entered an ecstatic state, absorbing the power for herself, but Hikaru and Alma responded by intensifying the energy within her, causing her metallic body to crack like glass. The resulting explosion seemed to settle the battle, but Amaryllis reappeared almost unharmed. With Hikaru weakened, Jun Kagami took charge, unleashing his skills by forming massive chains that he used to crush Amaryllis. Eventually, he inflicted serious damage, and at that moment, Fubuki opened her eyes to see her sister protecting her. Amaryllis, enraged, launched her dolls at them, prompting Aki to warn Sinus and Dex to be ready. However, Hikaru and Alma moved first, combining their powers into a form Amaryllis recognized, driving her into a desperate attack. Demonstrating exceptional agility, Hikaru dodged her strikes, closed in, and delivered a powerful punch to her eye, leaving Amaryllis in agony. In her pain, the Mecha-Ude accused Alma of Yakumo Akagami's death and the twisted fate they all endured. As she finished speaking, the worm was destroyed. Alma reflected on his recent revelations, feeling sorrow, while Fubuki declared her sister a true heroine. The next morning at 8 o'clock, Hikaru looks out his window for Aki as usual, but she's nowhere to be seen. Until he turns to go back to sleep, and she suddenly breaks his window, urging him to get ready to leave. On the way to school, Aki asks for his help studying as she wants to teach Fubuki a few things. She's currently receiving treatment from Arms, who, along with her sister, will be protecting her. Alma tells Hikaru this is his chance to avoid feeling lonely in the mornings, leaving him embarrassed as he tries to explain he's just grown used to Aki showing up. Aki assures him she'll keep coming by every day, which makes Shirayama swoon secretly. Meanwhile, a director at Kagami learns that the final tests for the gate's activation sequence and Ordella's power supply are complete, meaning he can now open the portal to the Mecha-Ude world and gain control over its inhabitants. He still needs the trigger arm though and dismisses Department 3 as useless. Tagal offers the White Crows assistance, but the director refuses to work with them. Back at Hikaru's house, Alma reflects on his hidden past, while Amaryllis, longing to return to her body, encounters a mysterious figure. The Mecha-Ude, filled with despair, insists she didn't betray her host, but he forcibly tears her from her current body. The next morning, Hikaru's friends secretly watch him as two suspicious figures approach and start confronting him and Aki. These individuals turn out to be Arms agents sent as extra protection for Hikaru, as Aki alone hasn't been effective. Since the order came directly from Arms, Aki must accept their help. Nearby, Kazuha, now demoted to security duty after failing to capture Hikaru and losing his mecha, spots Hikaru and seizes the chance to regain his honor by trying to arrest him. Before Kazuha can act, Aki pulls Hikaru's hand and leaps with him onto a passing truck. The driver, unaware of their landing, keeps driving with him on top. Hikaru, frustrated by the chaotic start to his day, listens as Alma apologizes for the disruption. Hikaru reassures him, saying they'll face whatever comes together until Alma regains his memories. Just as Alma starts to share something important, Sinus and Dex interrupt, debating whether honey or jam is better as they prepare breakfast for Hikaru and Aki, despite the truck heading in the opposite direction of their school. Realizing he has no clue where the truck is headed, Hikaru is startled when it suddenly stops, and the driver is knocked out by a blow dart. Members of the Kagami group, including 3rd Division head Namba, Goth Girl Fort, and a newcomer, have arrived to capture him. Namba, clearly reluctant, orders a quick job, prompting Fort to unleash a barrage of spikes from her shackled mecha gun. Aki pulls Hikaru behind the truck for cover as the onslaught damages the vehicle, ensuring the driver's fate is sealed. Aki tells Hikaru to leave and get to school so he won't be marked absent. Hikaru agrees and takes off, only to be blocked by Kazuha. Meanwhile, Oyama and Kayano, held down due to a misunderstanding by Hikaru's friends, are unable to assist. Kazuha declares he must capture Hikaru to redeem himself, but the newcomer interrupts and climbs the truck, taking over the mission. As he strikes, Kazuha spots the familiar mecha taken from him during his demotion and lunges at the newcomer to reclaim it. Amid the chaos, Aki shouts for Hikaru to go and he resumes his dash to school. This time, Hikaru's path is blocked by the unconscious body of the new recruit, forcing him to turn back and face Kazuha, who has reclaimed his mecha. Meanwhile, Aki sneaks up on Fort, trying to take her down, but Fort dodges just in time. She nearly lines up a perfect shot with her minigun, but accidentally bumps into Kazuha, knocking him over. The two argue briefly before Kazuha returns to attacking Hikaru. Hikaru leaps into the air, teaming up with Alma to counterattack. Kazuha strikes with his whip, but Hikaru and Alma dodge, grab the chain, and hurl Kazuha into fort, knocking them both down. Embarrassed by the awkward situation, they are quickly taken out by Aki, who sneaks up and incapacitates them. Seeing his team defeated, the division leader decides to call it a day, casually asking Tus to pick up the rookies if convenient. As Aki and Hikaru tie everyone up, Alma begins to tell Hikaru something important, but Aki interrupts, needing help untangling herself. While Hikaru tries to untie her, Kazuha recovers and attempts a surprise attack, but Alma intervenes just in time to block it. However, Hikaru falls and knocks himself unconscious. When he wakes up, everything is under control and the Kagami group members are restrained. Alma feels guilty for Hikaru's injury despite Hikaru's reassurance that it wasn't his fault. Alma insists that Hikaru would be safer without him and doesn't want anyone else hurt on his account. Hikaru realizes Alma may have regained his memories, and this is confirmed. Although Hikaru sees it as positive, Alma admits he's had his memories back since the battle with Amaryllis. When Hikaru questions why he hid it, Alma has no answer and tells Hikaru to stay uninvolved before slipping away. Usually, Aki would pursue him, but she assumes it's unnecessary since Alma cannot move beyond 5 meters from Hikaru without losing power. However, they soon realize he's moving independently and at surprising speed. Back at Arms, Algis informs them that Alma likely regained his memories after encountering Amaryllis. Fist reveals that Alma once had a rare ability to generate his own arbitrium, which had probably returned with his memories. This is the first time anyone has heard about this, so they question why they weren't informed. Fist explains they kept it secret to avoid triggering Alma's traumatic memories, which might have made him inactive again. Now they need to find Alma, so Algis asks everyone to stay alert. When Hikaru offers to help, Algis dismisses him, saying Alma can move independently and Hikaru's involvement is no longer necessary. This shocks both Hikaru and Quen, though Quen suggests it's good because Hikaru can return to a normal life. Hikaru refuses, arguing he can't go back after all he's been through with Alma. Seeing his determination, Algis and Fist agree to explain the truth. In the Mecha-Ude world, their planet's arbitrium supply was nearly gone, pushing the Mecha-Udes to the brink of extinction. Alma, Fist, and another companion embarked on a mission to find the legendary Ordella to restore their home. However, it became inactive due to energy depletion. Fortunately, they reached Earth before shutting down entirely. On their arrival, Yakumo Kagami, near his family's mines, noticed a bright light, investigated, and discovered Alma. Soon after, an earthquake struck that would have likely killed Yakumo if he had been alone. Fortunately, he merged with Alma and escaped in time. Before that, Yakumo's older brother, Tsukio, who suffered from an arbitrium-related illness, had joined the Mecha-Ude's search for Ordella, hoping for a cure. Yakumo agreed to help, intrigued by the adventure. Together, they pursued Ordella, and after finding it, began their activation research. Days passed, and their efforts were finally ready to show results, though Yakumo grew uneasy, feeling things were progressing too smoothly. Tsukihito reassured him, citing stable test results. However, during Ordella's awakening, things went terribly wrong. Despite completing all necessary tests, Tsukihito failed to consider the consequences of Ordella's full power. Ordella lashed out, knocking out Tsukihito and Fist and injuring Yakumo. Alma, unscathed but anxious, was unsure how to respond. Despite his severe injury, Yakumo reassured Alma, determined to fight. They prepared for battle, though approaching Ordella proved difficult due to its immense strength. They'll need to think outside the box to get within striking distance. Yakumo slams the ground, sending shards of rock flying to distract Ordella. While Ordella focuses on the debris, Yakumo and Alma attack from above, delivering a powerful punch that finally seals Ordella. Though they succeed, Yakumo collapses moments later, fatally wounded, and Alma shuts down emotionally, remaining inactive until meeting Hikaru. Now that Alma remembers his past, he's determined not to let Hikaru suffer the same fate. To protect him, Alma tries to leave, but while crawling into an alley, he encounters Jun. Seeing Alma alone, Jun attempts to fuse with him. But no matter how hard he tries, it doesn't work. Jun accepts that he might not be ready yet, but he notices Alma looks despondent and asks what's wrong. Meanwhile, Hikaru stands on a bridge looking deeply troubled when he receives a call from Jun. To his surprise, Alma's voice comes through. Alma reflects on the day he met Hikaru, admiring his kindness and willingness to help, but he can no longer allow himself to rely on Hikaru's compassion. Alma, now able to move independently, urges Hikaru to return to his former life. Confused, Hikaru tries to argue, but Alma ends the call resolute. Alma decides to stay with Jun, but soon Todo confronts them in the alley, clearly hostile. Meanwhile, Hikaru reflects on his purpose on the bridge until Aki arrives, asking if he's found Alma. Hikaru dismisses the idea, saying Alma doesn't need him anymore. Aki interrupts by punching him and apologizes, explaining she couldn't stand his defeatist attitude. She insists Alma's behavior stems from guilt and that he needs support. Aki believes Hikaru's help is crucial to bring Alma back. Realizing she's right, Hikaru agrees, but their conversation is cut short by a call from ARM's HQ. Alma has been captured by the Kagami group to unseal Ordella. If you're enjoying the journey of this series, please hit that like and subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss any updates. All of your support helps me to keep bringing more high-quality recaps.